Cool. Kia ora koutou. So excited to be here. Nicole forgot to mention that I actually ghosted her email because I was really overwhelmed doing my PhD, and that seemed to be kinder instead of replying and saying, sorry, I can't do it because I have no boundaries and I can't say no to anyone. So I was really glad that she reached out again because I could say yes enthusiastically because I have finished my PhD last year at the University of Canterbury. Yay. Fake doctor. So I've been researching microplastics for a long time now. I did it for my master's and PhD. So I'm going to talk to you about that today, but I'm just going to skim the surface of what I researched. So it's just going to be the best bits, definitely the icing on the cake today. So let's get into it. So who here has heard of microplastics before? Yay, awesome. So you're probably also quite familiar with plastic pollution. So you can't go for a walk anywhere these days without coming across a bit of plastic, probably mostly on the beach. So microplastics are when these larger plastics fragment into smaller pieces from exposure to the environment, but they're also purposefully produced to be small. So these include glitter and microbeads and facial cleansers, but also these pre-production resin pellets called noodles, and this is what plastics are, like plastic bottles are made into. So they're quite often littered. And when we think of plastic pollution, we think, oh, it got into the environment through direct littering. And yes, that is a major source of plastic pollution. But today we're going to talk about a really sneaky source which you probably haven't thought of before. And we're all contributing to it via the wastewater treatment plant. So this is where my story begins. I have a background in biochemistry, and I was really fascinated by my toxicology and environmental chemistry lectures. And we were learning about how all these everyday chemicals that we interact with through like our personal care products, our pharmaceuticals, flame retardants in like clothing, fabrics, furniture, Teflon pans, PFAS, how all of these interact with our bodies and cause all these harmful impacts. But also when we excrete it, so when we wee them out and then it goes down the drain, and when we wash these products down the drain, they end up at the wastewater treatment plant. And these wastewater treatment plants aren't designed to actually remove any of these contaminants, so they often just end up in the environment and they can cause some really harmful effects. So I was quite fascinated with this concept with microplastics because they're an emerging contaminant. So this means that it's a contaminant that is quite new. We've only really been looking at them for the last 15 years and not much is known about it at all. So there's a whole heap of research that is needed to be done about it. And if we think about all of the plastic products that we use in our homes, there's so much that we use every day. So even the most robust plastic products, they will fragment into these tiny little microplastics with use. And this includes all of our synthetic clothing and textiles. So tonight I have on my polyester and nylon sparkly jumpsuit. So every time I wash this, thousands and thousands of microplastic fibres are going into the laundry wastewater and down the drain. This also includes things like makeup, so like eyeshadow, mascara, nail polish, all of these contain microplastics and they fragment and go down the drain with use. So here's a schematic of the Christchurch wastewater treatment plant, my favourite place. So for my master's, I was really interested in the microplastics that were leaving our homes, what was entering the wastewater treatment plant. Wastewater treatment plants aren't designed to remove microplastics, so we're expecting to see a lot of them heading out into the environment, so they're like a pathway of entry of pollution. So most of the time, microplastics head out into the ocean or are irrigated on land with the treated effluent. But there's also another sneaky little pathway here up the top corner, which is where all of the sludge is separated. So that's like all of your poo and all of your solids and fat and grease. It's all separated and then it's treated like separately. It's dried down. It's really nutrient rich, so it's applied onto land as a soil conditioner because it's really a valuable source of nutrients. So there had been a few overseas papers which have said that the majority of microplastics hang out in these solids. But for the purpose of my master's, I was just going to look at the liquid phase, so the influent and the effluent. So I sampled some wastewater treatment plants. So I sampled from 4 in Canterbury for my master's. I got influent, which is the yuck water from our homes, and I sampled the effluent, which is supposed to be the slightly cleaner water that goes out to sea. This is Kaiapoi wastewater treatment plant, and this is a treated effluent that's about to go out to sea. I have no idea why it's green, but it's a bit crazy. Has anyone been to a wastewater treatment plant? Woo, yeah. Super crazy place, super smelly. The horrors that you see there are insane. They have this grate next to the incoming influent, and it just kind of separates out all of the solids, like wet wipes, nappies, tampons, bits of corn. It's disgusting. Honestly, it smells so bad. It's awful. And then one time, our sampler in Littleton, we wondered why it hadn't collected any wastewater overnight. We thought our battery might have disconnected because this was quite a common occurrence, leaving it for 24 hours and the battery is disconnected. But actually, it didn't collect any wastewater because the hose, when we pulled it up, was blocked by a condom. And this was the treated effluent, which is supposed to be going out into the Littleton harbour. So this is our treated wastewater, and that's a source of pollution. So I brought this raw and treated wastewater back to the lab. You probably don't really know what wastewater looks like. It's actually not often like this. It just looks like slightly yellow water. But this was a particularly nasty one, and I had to take a picture of it. So I sieved all of this wastewater to try and retain the microplastics and get rid of the water phase. And then from there, I was chemically digesting it to remove as much organic material as possible because I wanted to get these microplastics isolated. But we can see I kind of ended up with a pretty funky chocolate mousse texture material. So that took a while to process. But anyway, after all of that, I filtered it and then I found a lot of microplastics and they're really beautiful. So the majority of them were in the influent. So this is the water coming from our homes. There was a lot more microplastics in that water compared to the treated wastewater of what's going out to sea, which is what I had expected. But from this, I was still really curious. I'd finished my master's and I just still couldn't let the biosolids go because for some reason I'm so weird and I have weird obsessions, but I was really interested to know how much microplastics were being retained in the biosolids and what's being applied onto land. So for my PhD, I decided this could be one of my central focus points. And a lot of research overseas hadn't actually looked at it, so there wasn't actually much known about this as well. So I guess this is quite obviously probably a big red flag if it hasn't been done before, as well as the fact that microplastics are an emerging contaminant, so not much work has been done on them either. So that is also quite a big red flag. This also got me thinking about other sources of microplastics in municipal waste. So I was thinking about the compost from our green bins from the curbside collection. This is a picture of the mature compost from these curbside collection bins, and you can see, not the ones at the back you can't see, there's quite a lot of visible large plastics in this compost. So we're expecting to have probably quite a lot of smaller microplastics in here. And the thing is that no one overseas at all had looked at compost, which is crazy. So there was this massive knowledge gap that needed filling, which again is probably another red flag that no one had done this before, but I was ready for a challenge. And then this ended up being quite a large needle in a haystack problem, and I just made it really hard for myself because with my wastewater work, I could just sieve it and I could sieve the microplastics out. But here, I had a solid which I was trying to get out of a solid. How do you do that? And there wasn't actually much research on it, so there wasn't I could follow any methods. So unfortunately, I kind of set myself up for a bad time. So this time, I only got to visit one wastewater treatment plant for sampling. Damn it. But this was also during COVID, so I had 5 wastewater treatment plants send me their dried biosolids, one of them wasn't dried. It was like sludge cake, and it was really, really smelly. It was horrific. I was like vomiting outside because it was so bad. And then I also had 15 compost samples from 15 facilities to play around with. I can't emphasise enough how much of a terrible time this was for me, trying to develop this method to get microplastics out of this material. It's so reactive, it's got so much organic material, straight up terrible time. I wish I could really rant about this a bit more, but I don't actually have that much time to go through with you guys, so I'll save that for when I can afford a therapist or something. So basically what I ended up doing to develop this method was I took 30 grams of this like dried biosolids or compost material and then chemically digested it. So this was to try and remove as much organic material as possible. And then with the power of density, I added a really high dense saturated salt solution, which meant that the digested solids sank and then the microplastics floated, so I could separate them out that way, which was super cool. And then I could, close the valve off and then filter them onto this filter paper. So these filter papers are about 5 centimetres in diameter, so they're quite small. And we can see that there's quite a lot of visible microplastics on here, which are quite large. But the majority of them are super tiny and you need a microscope to look at them. So that I did. I picked out all of the microplastic particles with tweezers and put them on a new filter paper for each sample. So this is from 30 grams of biosolids. And then I took pictures of every single microplastic and took all their size dimensions, and I have about 4,000 particles, so it took a long time. But I have a lot of different sizes, shapes, colours, like fibres from our clothing, fragments, films. It was super, super cool time to have a look at all of these. And then it just kind of got a bit worse. Like this was my worst, most contaminated sample of compost. So this is going on to like growing plants and stuff. There was actually so much microplastics that I couldn't actually get them all under the microscope for a photo. Like it doesn't zoom out anymore. But yeah, super crazy. And this was just from 30 grams of dried sample as well. And so with that, I got my tweezers out again and I wanted to analyse them. So I picked them all up with tweezers individually. So I'm like certified brain surgeon now with my tweez work. But I tried to play the game Operation a few weeks ago and I was so bad at it. So apparently I'm not a certified brain surgeon. And so I placed them all on these discs. They're 13 millimetres in diameter. This really particularly nasty sample had to get spread out over 3 discs because it was that crazy. And then basically what I did is I put it under this machine which fires a laser, and then the laser goes through the particle and it tells me if it is a plastic and what kind. Is it a polyethylene? Is it a polypropylene? Is it polyester, nylon, that kind of thing. And I also really want to emphasise how long this took. So all of the microplastic microscope work, picking them out of samples, photographing them, and then transferring them onto the disc for this analysis, firing the lasers through them. Within this time, I listened to every single episode of the podcast Ologies. And these episodes are like an hour and a half long, and I ran out of episodes, and I don't know how many hours I listened to. I actually don't want to know because it's probably quite embarrassing, but it really got me through this tough time and I learned a lot from it. So yeah, shout out to Ologies, you should listen to it. But now I'm going to show you just the best microplastics that I have in my samples, the cool ones. So I found a lot of polyethylene microbeads. So these were banned in New Zealand in 2018 in facial cleansers, and they're still showing up in my samples in biosolids. So someone is still using them, or they're hidden in some other products and they're still going out to sea. And these are or applied onto lamps. So these are polyethylene. A lot of glitter. So people don't really realise, but glitter is actually plastic. It's polyester. So this is from all of like your clothing, your makeup, your kids' toys, all that kind of thing, crafts, Christmas decorations. And this was not just in biosolids from going down the drain, but it's also in compost. And I have no idea how glitter gets into compost, but a bit crazy. I had a lot of this like really crazy coloured foam sponge material. It's polyurethane. And this turned out to actually be your humble kitchen sponge. So every time you're using this, little bits of plastic are getting broken off and washing down the drain. So probably should not use that anymore, guys. And then the coolest thing was I found these really beautiful, gorgeous, multicoloured films. They're made from acrylic and they're just stunning. Like, I found hundreds and hundreds of them. And they're super cool. Like, I had so many different patterns. I couldn't have the same pattern twice. It was awesome. It was like the coolest thing finding these. And it turns out what these are is they're actually from like printed packaging. So you don't really think about it, but like all of like your lunch boxes, yogurt containers, FPOS cards, and like just printed stickers on things like egg cartons. These are all like plastic, and obviously these have like fragmented and gone down the drain or into compost. And this is what they look like from everyday household products. So my colleague Hayden actually took some pictures of these under the microscope. So yeah, kind of crazy to have found that, and just the amount of them is kind of worrying. Some super cool things as well. So like this little dolphin is 0.5 millimetre. It's so small, but like you honestly can't make this stuff up. It's actually crazy. Like my mind was just blown the whole time doing this microscope work. So yeah, very lucky to have been able to do this and just go treasure hunting all day. But I think the thing that really takes the cake here is I can't believe I found this little pink number here. This was in biosolids, so someone had put it down the drain. It's like 1/3 of a millimetre in size. And as my supervisor put it, it looks like a string of beads. Not the response I got from my research group members when I asked them what they thought it was. But yeah, kind of crazy that this was in my samples and didn't end up going out into the environment, because God forbid that these microorganisms are having micro-orgasms from this. But in all seriousness here, the reality is that plastic doesn't go away, it doesn't biodegrade, it actually just gets smaller and smaller and smaller into pieces that we can't see. So just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not there, and we know it's everywhere. And this is the case for plastics made from oil versus plastics made from plants. It's just been chemically treated beyond recognition, the plants, into a plastic which is the same chemical structure as these plastics made from oil. So that's complete greenwashing. Same with biodegradable plastics. I found biodegradable plastics in my compost. So they had their one chance to biodegrade, to compost in this composting facilities, and they did not. So they're effectively the same as any old plastic, and they're a scam and a waste of money. And the reality is that no plastic, whether it's made from oil, plants, or biodegradable, is going to actually biodegrade once it's in the soil. There's actually no evidence of this ever happening. So once it's in the soil, it's going to stay there forever. And obviously this is going to have some site-specific implications. So biosolids and effluent, which might be irrigated or applied onto land for remediation purposes, for like mine sites or forestry, has those implications for that. But more alarmingly is how much microplastics are in compost, and these are applied for horticultural and agricultural purposes. So they're just going to accumulate with each repeat application. Plastics themselves have really nasty chemicals in them, so that can have a whole heap of implications for food security, because microplastics have been shown to impact plant growth. So it stops plants from germinating, growing, photosynthesizing, producing seeds and fruit. So that's actually freaking scary if we're just adding more and more plastic into where we're growing our food. So we're drowning in an overflowing bathtub of plastic. We can't remove plastic from soil, and it's not going to biodegrade. We need to turn this off at the source, so we really need to reevaluate our use of plastic, and if we think that these products are acceptable to use in daily life, because again, every single plastic is going to shed microplastics. So please have a think about that next time you buy that Scrub Daddy. Thanks for listening.
much. Is it working? No. Okay, question time. Is it going to work now?
Have you done any work or research with I think it's like a fungus or worms that eat plastic?
No, I haven't. But I just wanted to say that, you know how you see all those headlines of being like plastic degrading organism has been developed. So that process is like super greatly overstated. It's real clickbait. So that doesn't actually happen in the environment. If we think about it, like organisms, they want to have the least energy intensive meal. So if it's like, oh, but we could just inoculate the compost to try and get rid of the plastic, they're going to go for the really easily tasty things like apple cores. They're not going to want to try and expend energy to eat plastic. So in that case, I think it's probably not the saviour we're looking for. It's probably a false solution.
Hi, I've got 100 questions for you, but I'll just give you one. Before plastic was invented, the world, humans quite happily evolved and got on with their life. So if, for instance, plastic wasn't in our world or in our environment, have you thought about the types of things that we could utilise to replace plastic?
Oh, I don't think I'm the person to answer this question, but yeah, definitely the people who are alive before plastic would know way. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not sure. Sorry.
Yeah, one more. With the microplastics getting smaller all the time, I've been reading that it's actually found to be getting into people's brains. Is that correct?
So I wouldn't doubt that they are, but there's a few issues with that study for various reasons. So it's really hard because, I believe that they are, but there's so many reasons why that these studies have a lot of issues when it's really, really small things like microplastics in blood, like placenta, semen, brain, that kind of thing. So I believe that they probably are, but there's just a few issues with the way that these studies have been conducted that I'm not too sure they're scientifically robust. But yeah.
For those of us who are wanting to reduce our impact on the environment and contributing to the problem, what products do you recommend as alternatives? What kind of things are you doing in your life to try to reduce the amount of microplastics that you're putting into the environment?
Yeah, I guess this kind of has taken over my life a bit, researching microplastics. So it's also kind of hard because, I don't want you to go out and buy a $20 stainless steel thing instead of a plastic thing, which is $3. It's kind of hard because I feel like a lot of these things are money grabs. But investing in non-plastic products is good, but I think probably at this stage we really need to push our power into the government and support the Global Plastics Treaty to make sure that these top polluters aren't getting away with polluting to begin with. Individual actions do work, but I think at this point we're really drowning in plastic, so we do have to really push for these higher up policies to get in place to reduce plastic. But otherwise I use solid shampoo bars, and they're really cool. Yeah.
We have time for one more question.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the laboratory conditions. So because plastics are so everywhere, do you get a problem with background or contamination when you work in the laboratory?
Yeah. So this is the issue with their brain and blood study. So because plastics are everywhere, it's really hard to make sure that you're not contaminating your own samples. So with these studies which are looking them at in really trace amounts, you have to do a blank or a background control to make sure that your method, you're not contributing plastics in some way, and it's really hard to actually not have any plastics in the lab. And our clothing is plastics, and so you're not allowed to wear synthetic clothing or makeup and nail polish. And if someone else is collecting your samples, you have to make sure that they're on board with not using plastic. But yeah, it's really hard because you try really hard and you have all these measures, and then you look at your background blank contamination and it's full of like red fibres, and you're like, far out. So annoying. So I think with my work I was quite lucky because municipal waste is so contaminated. So it's pretty obvious to tell if I've been contaminating my samples or this is actually from my sample, so a lot of it is. But I really feel for the people in my research group who are looking at really remote areas, and it's really hard for them to try and distinguish background contamination. But yeah, it is a massive challenge for any kind of contaminant work as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Helena. Another round of applause.